going.
It's going. Want to start or do I want to start?
Yeah.
We're back, and this time I am back with Hope. I had a solo-sode. I was by myself. I was alone in my thoughts, and had an afternoon to myself where I took that opportunity in my anxiousness to jump in front of the camera. Those of you may or may not have seen that. Mm-hmm. And so it has been a while since I've been here with Hope. A while is actually 2 weeks-ish.
2 weeks, whoa.
You think so?
Maybe. Goes by fast.
Maybe 10 days.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Anyway.
But so we decided that we were going to do a video because we want to remain consistent in our videos. Mm-hmm. We want to continually get better at our videos. And so what have we done in order to make sure that we are getting better at our videos?
I just think practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think, well, watching the videos back, I certainly take a lot away watching myself from the perspective of, wow, I say like a lot, or I say, or whatever, to wrap up a sequence just kind of as a default. And so I know that for myself, just simply by self-observation and practice and getting to see yourself from like this kind of outer perspective is pretty cool. So I don't know, I just think practice. I think getting to watch ourselves and notice things that we could improve upon is a pretty cool thing. I think it's like a unique experience, and I'm glad that we're doing it.
Yeah, I think watching our videos back, of course we watch them back before we put them out to make sure that we're making sense and putting out quality information and opinion.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's like this thing that happens when you're doing these where you kind of, I don't know if it's like you dissociate or what, but we come away from these videos and I'm sitting there being like, I'm not even 100% positive what we just said or what was spoken about. So you kind of self-consciously want to watch it back to know that you didn't, I don't know, say something that maybe you feel didn't come off right or misrepresents your thoughts. But yeah, so we always watch them back, just to be safe.
You go in with a goal, you go through the discussion, it takes its course wherever it goes, and then at the end of it you wonder whether or not you made it to where you were trying to go. I know that in watching ours back, especially in watching the most recent back where I was by myself and didn't have the likes of yourself to create a recourse or getting back to the initial route or plan. And there are instances within that video where I, watching it back, know what I was thinking, but might have had two different plot lines happening at the same time, where by the time it all is output, I've told half of each story. Getting kind of sidetracked with a story within a story and then snapping back, but then missing bits and pieces that make me want to almost, get into the comment section and say, hey, so when I was saying this, I was alluding to this, and,
Yeah.
But yeah, and then in terms of watching ourselves back in how we speak, how we perform, the likes, the the you knows, these things that you're trying to practice. I get off a little bit too excited, trying to be a little bit too brilliant, and I keep saying a bunch of things until eventually I wind up saying, what is it that I say? Blank, or...
You say et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Big list guy.
Big list guy, yeah. There's so many different words to say the same thing, and I try to spit them all out at once. But that's just an enthusiasm thing, I think. A performance thing, definitely. We're here, we want to do well.
Yeah.
We want to put out good things. A recent thing that we just sent a newsletter for was the addition of chapters on the YouTube videos, because when you see an hour-long video and you're seeing it in passing, you don't have an hour. You might, but you're not willing to spend that hour watching an entire episode. The ability to go through the timeline or go through the description and see what is happening at each timestamp allows whoever is viewing that to oh, my interest is sparked. What are they talking about here at 2:38 or at 57 whatever or at 1 hour and 6 minutes, right? And so we've manually done that. I didn't know how to do that.
Kev has manually done that. He gets full credit for sitting down and rewatching everything. I'm not doing that. That's all you. But I was going to just add, one of the things that I really like about when people do these chapters, I often will watch a podcast and it will make me think of other people, like, oh, so-and-so would love to, hear just this one little bit, or we were just talking about this, oh my gosh, and I want to send it on. And this way, if there's a particular point, I can just point them to just that part. If they want to watch the whole thing, that's totally on them, but I know that I do that pretty frequently with a lot of the podcasts that I watch who do this chapter thing. So I think it's a ton of effort, but I think it's definitely worthwhile, and I'm appreciative that you took the time to do that on 2 of the videos.
Yeah, it's just an exercise of going back and rewatching and more studying as to maybe what we want to clarify, what we want to say the next time, how do we build off what we've already created, and the different ways that we've done that, the now chapters, the reels that are ongoing, and just the ability to take a long form thing, decide that it's actually 20 different things, that makes it more bite-sized, makes it more manageable for people to share around, to view, to refer back to. Nothing worse than, oh, this one part, it was awesome. Oh, here, check it out. Dude, this is an hour long. How am I meant to weed through and find what you wanted to show me?
Exactly.
Makes it way more accessible and something we're really excited about. But so we're back. This is our 4th video. I mean, the first one was like a part 1, whoopsie, with a part 2. Okay, that was better. 1 was by myself, and so we've technically had 2. This is our third episode. So we've had a little bit of a brief. We got like a little dry erase board that we put together in quick 10 minutes, and I think some of the stuff that we want to discuss today is cool. It's worth discussing. We want to get into things that are, again, a lot of communication. I think that's just a huge interest. Interpersonal challenges, interpersonal situation, the conversations that we find ourselves within every day, the situations we find ourselves within every day are so important and worth navigating. And so where would you like to start with this?
Well, so I sent in the middle of the week Kev 3 different ideas of things that had just been sort of top of mind for me that I thought could be interesting to elaborate on through discussion. The one big thing that we're going to talk about today is this idea of, I guess, the way that people can be less kind online. I think the reason this is top of mind for me right now is because we're doing this. We are putting ourselves out there. People very easily could take to the comments on YouTube, on Instagram, and throw something negative our way. Because humans have a negativity bias, even for all of the amazing feedback we've been getting from people in person, from our friend groups and online, maybe it's just that not good enough feeling in me, but I just was having this thought that if someone were to offer a negative comment in regards to what we're doing, it would take kind of the wind out of my sails. It would take a lot of resiliency in that moment for me to be like, you know what, we just are going to keep on keeping on with this. Like, if that person is having, wants to say something negative about what we're doing, that's on them. Anyway, I was just kind of one day when I was out on a walk in the forest, which I get very contemplative when I'm just kind of like out there doing my thing, and I kind of started imagining the scenario of someone leaving a negative comment and how I would react, and I just was kind of role-playing in my mind. But anyway, because that was top of mind, I brought it to Kev as being like, we should do a topic about cyberbullying, people not being kind online, with less of a focus on that and more of a focus on like why it's so important to be kind online, to support people, coming back to Kev's mantra of 2024, let your light shine. Shine. Yeah, just to constantly be trying to reiterate that message. So, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about, is being nice / not being nice online.
You don't have to go very far online to find something incredibly negative. Regardless of what the post is, regardless of what's happening, whether it's somebody attempting at trolling, somebody attempting at getting a laugh or thinking they're being funny. You ever been around somebody who says, maybe talking about somebody who, is not spoken of very highly, they go, oh, well, they've never done anything to me, so I don't mind them. Kind of acknowledging that this person misbehaves, they don't treat people around them very well, they XYZ, and yet, well, nothing's happened to me, and so I don't mind that person. Just taking a look at that situation, we can see that we justify what people are doing so long as we either find it funny or it doesn't personally impact us.
Yeah, it's not being targeted.
And so, at least my biggest point of reference in this conversation might be the EIHL Twitter or different, online platforms, but that being specific because it's one I've been a part of, one that I get to still see things from. And there's been some very wild things happen in that league this year. And you see how fan bases respond, react, some with a lot of empathy and kindness, and others with, the opposite. I don't know what you call the opposite. But so we're sitting here, and you see these things, and I see them constantly, and you ask yourself, what is happening here? What is going on that people think it's okay to take a screenshot of an opposing team's fan who said something that either didn't make sense or goes cross-grain to what maybe the Belfast Giants fan base is, or whatever fan base it is. And so now it's on forum sites to ridicule that person. And so you take a look and you think about, okay, who's posting that? What kind of lives do they lead? Do they have children? Maybe, probably yes. What example are they setting? Who is around them that is encouraging this? And so then you see that people are behaving in a way that is deemed acceptable among their peers. Which then leads to a further point to say, well, who are your peers? Who are you referring to before you hit send? Are you referring to anybody, or is it because the culture and the ecosystem is geared towards and accepting of that behavior that you are away from the baseline and you don't realize that what you're doing is wrong anymore? And so it's just a fascinating thing, because anytime there's a negative comment, you can ask the question, who's around you, who's encouraging you, who's discouraging you, who or what principles are available to give you that, hey, no, this is wrong because, or hey, I get that this is how others are behaving, but not you, not us. And so then it's why. And then, I mean, within the ecosystem, you see all this toxicity, negativity, bullying, which is dressed as a bit of crack. And you see the same people who will push these limits and boundaries also push the other boundaries that are to say, come on guys, there's a lot of toxicity within these circles, and you know, sometimes it's just outright ridiculous. I think we gotta like band together. And you see the same people throwing around opposite ideas, and you just sit back and you just want, like, man, like, if only you paused, if only you considered, if only for whatever reason you didn't think it was correct, if only there was more consideration, if only there was more awareness. And it's just sad to see. And the saddest part, beyond, you know, what is happening to one's reputation when they are placing themselves within these ecosystems in negative light, spreading negativity, it is just that you know that there's a better way. And so what do we have to do? When I put something out, what do I have to do? When I put anything out, it goes through you. Hey, I'm thinking about responding to this thing. I've said this, like, that's good, right? Like, that's not going to offend anyone. Like, I'm not coming off as these things. I'm not being too blunt. I'm concerned about how I'm going to be received. I want to carry myself with class. I don't want to harm anyone. And I guess there's the other point of saying, you know, who do you want to be? What do you want to do?
That's where my mind comes back to, is like, what value systems do you have guiding you? Because you're saying this, but you have a very clear now why. You have a very clear vision for how you want to show up, how you want to be remembered, the impact that you want to make. And you have value systems that you've worked really hard to define, that you can filter your choices through, your actions through, your words through. I understand your value systems and I'm aligned to them, hence why we're together and like taking on life as a team. But so, yeah, when you put something to me like, does this make sense? I can validate that. Yeah, I think that that's good. And I think the bottom line in terms of your vision, and I think, I don't know, not that I believe everyone should be the same, but I do feel that a vision that we can all work to abide by is this idea of, are you making the world a better place with your contributions, with the things that you're putting out into the world? And if the answer is no, this isn't making the world better, then should it go out, you know? And so, but I think for you, you have a strong moral compass. You've done a lot of work on yourself to make sure that you're not just, you know, you think before you speak, you think before you act. And maybe if someone hasn't yet gone through that journey, hasn't put in that effort, maybe they're acting a bit more impulsively, maybe they are acting subconsciously from a place of hurt. It's tough to say, it's very situational. But then people, just they're not stopping and, to your point, pausing to think before they make their move.
Well, and there's a level of empathy for these people all the same, right? When I see an outlandish remark, comment, I think, oh no, for that person, them having placed that part of themselves into that sphere, that reality, for others to be like, whoa, get a load of this guy, or are you kidding me, or who says that, or the outrage that might be caused by a negative comment. And so empathy for what they didn't realize they were doing. And, you know, of course, then you wonder, you know, what made them think that that was okay? And then there is a justification, and that justification might be like revenge. It might be attack. It might be, well, you saw what they did, and so like they deserve, like, right? And then you start kind of playing judge and jury. But so, you know, the other side too is that they might downplay They might think that it is just a bit of crack and that it is just fun and games. And, you know, the scary part about taking the stance of it being fun and games is that you are operating at the lowest potential consideration for what your words could impact. Right? If I was to put something out and I was to assume that it was not a big deal, there is the reality that it actually could be a very big deal for some, a middle road deal for others, and it could be no big deal for others who share my sense of humor, have my same views, right? But so how do we behave in a way that is considerate of the potential response as opposed to my assumed level of meaninglessness?
To me, it comes back to that, like, know your audience. If you're putting this on blast in a public forum for a very large group of people, take that extra level of consideration. If you are at, like, I think of the example of a comedian up on stage making really offside jokes about something that might be super duper touchy. You know, of course there's a line, and we should not cross some lines, but in many instances, you're at a comedy show. They're making jokes. You know it's a joke. You often know this person's brand of humor. You're there to be entertained, and so you can take things with a grain of salt. But that's an entirely different audience. Same thing if you are, you know, it's just you and your spouse and you're venting and you're maybe saying things that you would never say anywhere else, but you trust that person. Also, that person knows you, knows your heart, knows you're just pissed off and venting. So again, it's a different audience. I just think taking that, again, extra level of consideration to pause and be like, who could potentially hear this, see this? What impact could it make on them? What impact could it, or what mark could it leave on me? Just, yeah, having that extra step of thought and consideration before you do whatever it is that you're going to do.
Extra pause, added questions. What does it mean if I post this? What could the implications be? Who is watching? If I can know that my kids are watching, that other kids are watching, that fellow people who I'm surrounded with are watching. You know, if I was on the receiving end of what I'm about to deliver, how would I tolerate that? That's how we started this whole thought train, was the consideration of what if someone was to take a stab at me, right? Because again, we can all sit around and say, oh, that was so funny, that was so funny, that was so... It's all because it has nothing to do with us. We're just eating popcorn and like watching like fire and explosions and chaos and whatever is happening in our own little kind of bubble away from it all. And so you place yourself in the scenario from all sides to imagine and simulate the potential of your words, your actions, your views, your thing. And what happens if you are somebody who, when looking at your previous behavior, think, man, yeah, you know what, I send a lot of stuff that I could hold back. I say a lot of things, I do a lot of things, I react instead of respond. I've lost relationships, I have grudges, there are people I avoid in certain places, you know. There's that, like,
audit.
I could have been way better had I thought things through, if I framed it differently, if I was chilled out before I hit send, if I slept on it. I could have been better. I'm admitting I could have been better, and how do I clean this up? Or if it's not a matter of cleaning up what I've done, how do I correct my course to go forward?
Something I was thinking about while you're talking is this idea of personal integrity. A lot of people have value systems, maybe not ironclad, maybe they haven't stopped to really truly define it, but they do have a moral compass or value systems that they do live by. Yet perhaps in an online, are you checking to see this? Perhaps in an online forum, some of that personal integrity, I don't want to say goes out the window, but maybe isn't as present for that individual as it would be if they were face to face with the person that they are slandering. You know, when we're in real life situation, there are things that they would not say to that person because they know it's hurtful. They know that it could be taken in a way that would make that other person feel bad. And so they wouldn't say it. That whole, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, feels like it happens more in person, and then online that line of integrity or respect or whatever just isn't there. And to me that's like kind of confusing. Why do you represent yourself or operate in this way in this venue, but then in another it's different? Like that, I don't know, that just to me feels confusing and like off.
Yeah, it's just the repercussions, and you know, if you say the wrong thing to somebody in person, like you know, among men it's the potential for fights and violence, and you know, among women maybe not so prone to violence, but you know, you don't want to, you know, we all want to be in harmony. We said that in our last one. We all want to be kind. We all feel better when we are teamed up, and we all feel better when we feel like you know, we're together. And so I guess maybe easy to create that aloneness when you are alone online with keyboard, right? The keyboard warrior. It's like, why are you prone to behaving poorly when you are online? Maybe it's because you're alone, and who knows?
Keyboard warriors. Maybe it's just like you were saying earlier, the protection. You don't have that person right there. You don't have to deal with the emotional repercussions of seeing the hurt that you're causing, so you have this barrier, and that creates a lack of empathy, perhaps.
So where do we go? Where do we go from here? I think, you know, again, the self-audit of how do I behave and how could I behave, and am I letting my light shine, or could I be better? How do we adjust so that we are moving forward in a better way? Something
that Kev and I talk a lot about, that we both try to practice, perhaps this is a value, undefined but low-key, high-key value, is be curious, stay open-minded, ask questions, keep an open heart. And I think we can be so quick to accuse, judge, you know, jump on someone, where if we stopped and rather than doing that, got curious, maybe even asked a question instead of making an accusation, yeah, it could result in more positivity, or at least more collaboration and less shame. Would you agree?
Yeah. Anytime we are in conflict or argument or potential for that, we are saved by the level of curiosity that we get to show each other. Right? You imagine a situation where two people are not curious and differed in their alignment or values or views, and if neither of them are curious, it means that they're both like standing their ground for their opinions and fighting, more or less. Where if you're curious, you get to ask questions that hopefully help you understand the person, therefore feeling closer, and then maybe getting them to find new ways of looking at things. And so I'm almost wondering, what are things that we differ on
You and I?
Yeah. It's like, how do we simulate this? How do we, like, put it through, like, all right, take one. Kevin Hope disagree on this, and we're going to showcase how curiosity will see that despite not agreeing with each other or being the same in this way, they can still get along, still love each other, and it is all fine and well.
Still respect each other.
We might have to have a think on that. I don't have anything pop into mind.
Yeah.
But all to say, you run into somebody who differs from you, and they say whatever it is they have to say, and you disagree, a simple, tell me more about that. Tell me more about what's got you there, because in my mind, I believe this because of this, this, and this, and it's grounded in this. Speaking of watching back all our videos, me creating scenarios about nothing, again.
He does this.
I'll say, when people are not, when they're looking at each other like this, I think it's questions we ask and the patience that we are able to maintain that allow us to find our way back together. It is definitely not both holding each other's ground and trying to
beat each other
and be right, and you know, then you know, now we're talking about self-righteousness and the dangerousness of being self-righteous and not being open to changing your mind and changing your thoughts and beliefs based on new information that you're able to bring on. I think that's worth taking a dive into. I think that's something that we talk about enough, and I think it's something that we, you know,
self-righteousness?
No, like the ability to change, and you're like it's okay to change. It's probably good to change in some cases. You know, yeah, there is who you are, what you believe in, and why, which is why, you know, the why is where, that's why we have empathy for everyone, is because they believe something that is maybe not true to you or I, but because their why is so, like, heartbreaking or traumatic or what, you know, people experience very tough things in their lifetimes. They see the world very differently because of those tough things. But so to build yourself back requires change, and to admit that you misbehaved on a forum, or admit to being wrong in a situation, whether it be today or years ago, or whether it be between you and I, or in a different relationship with my parents or my brothers, right? To look back, look at how you've been behaving, have behaved, the views you've held. It's not always about doubling down, making things worse.
Well, I am the way I am.
And if they want to talk to me, they can talk to me.
Yeah.
We've seen those situations.
Can't teach an old dog new tricks. Whatever. Yeah, there's so many ways. I think about when it comes to changing, growing in a positive way, I really like to reflect on the phrase, quote, I don't know what it is, but your triggers are your biggest teachers. And so what that means to me is, if I've done something, if I think about something and it makes me feel off, so hypothetical situation, I do something and then immediately feel bad about it. That to me is a trigger. If I think about something that I did in the past and it makes me feel bad, that is a trigger. If someone says something to me and it fires me up, that is a trigger. Every single time we are triggered, we are given the opportunity to pause, go inward, and ask that question, why? Why am I feeling like this? If it's a matter of something that happened a long time ago that now when you think about it, it makes you feel really bad, well, why does this make me feel so bad? Well, because it's not authentic to who I am or who I want to be. Okay, so now we have the grounds or the initial spark to like light the path to change. So I just like to think about any time that we're experiencing some kind of a negative, that pull inside of us, it gives us the opportunity to get curious about ourselves. I think the biggest opportunity for curiosity is self-inquiry. So, yeah, it just made me think of that. Your triggers are your biggest teachers, and how that can guide us to do better. So all to say, if something doesn't feel right in you, stop. And then going back to what you were saying, you always have the opportunity to change. You can always go back and apologize. You can always choose to do something different the next time. You always have the opportunity to grow, to do better, to change. You do not have to double down on these things. You do not have to make mean humor a part of your personality. Oh, that's just the way I am. Well, should it be? And why? Yeah.
Yeah, I love how the scenario of the person online misbehaving or acting poorly is not the only way to look at how we can look at ourselves, right? That's that way that presents, but then in our day-to-day, there are times where we feel like we want to say something. We feel like we want to act out. We feel enraged. We feel triggered. And while it's not the scenario of the keyboard, we are in the scenario of how we talk to the next person that crosses our path, how we treat our family members around us, what we literally do next. Right? Of course, when we're triggered and we're angry and we're sad or any of these negative emotions, our next step is often to project or to numb or to soothe ourselves in the ways that we do. But while there's the place and time for self-inquiry when deciding whether or not to comment on Facebook, there's also the case of this, where you are triggered by someone in traffic, triggered by something you see on the TV, triggered by the way somebody spoke to you, and you get to then think, what do I do next? Why do I feel upset? What did they do that created this in me? What was it in the way that I viewed this that made me feel that way?
So
Why?
I'll ask, what do you do? Because in the time that we've been together, I've witnessed someone who previously, and I hope it's okay with me saying this, but was very fragile. Just so easy to be set off and just down the spiral. And you're not like that anymore. You might get triggered, but your bounce back is awesome. There have been things, in the past 6 months, say, that I would have assumed would have really gotten under your skin, would have really triggered you, and I kind of wait for it, and then it doesn't come. And so you've grown so much in many ways, but in that way. So what do you do now, or what do you think the change has been?
What has the change been for me? I still get triggered. I still get angry. I still get worked up. I get snot-nosy, vindictive, irritable, fuck this, fuck you. Like, those are still very real, ongoing narratives that are just speaking a little less loud lately. Why is that? Well, it's the decisions and the practice to let that affect me less. Right? I thought there was once a period in my life where I thought that that's who I was, and that I was right and justified in being that. Well, now with the idea of letting your light shine, or guiding principles, or... So you asked what it is, or how have I bettered myself to see that I'm less fragile.
Mm-hmm.
The irony in you asking that question is that we just had another camera malfunction, and so I'm actually triggered and actually fragile.
Uh-huh.
And so this is a great opportunity to be both versions of myself, because I'm really fucking pissed off, but I don't have to be. And so because I know I don't have to be, I'm going to do my best to not be. And the issue in answering the question now versus prior to the malfunction is that before I was very uplifted, very enthused, we're here, we're doing the thing, everything's great, and now I've got a mixed bag of both. And so you're hearing both sides at the same time in attempt of me trying to highlight the good side. What is it that allows me to bounce back now versus before is definitely a set of guiding principles. Let your light shine being one of them. And so right now I have the opportunity to say, am I letting my light shine by being pouty? Is there anything going to come of that? No. Is there still things that are good? Can good still come out of this? And the truth is yes. And so it's okay, well, now we're looking at what is rather than what isn't. Mm-hmm. That's a huge reframe, because doomsday is very easy to fall into, and I think I just had a near miss. So, throw a little bit of humor into that. I am hopefully on my way back.
I believe you are.
Guiding principles, understanding what it is that triggers you, understanding that what I do matters, and understanding that I want to be good for those around me. If I'm upset and continuing to sit in being upset, I'm therefore not being good for those around me. You question whether or not it's you, and that's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. But so the values in combination with admitting, I guess, what I just said, right? I'm admitting that I have faults, admitting that I am wrong in some instances. Previous version of me would not admit he was wrong. He was self-righteous, he was angry, and without guiding principles, and so he was super prone to just being miserable all the time, and victim. I try to not be a victim anymore, right? Am I putting myself in a victimhood frame of mind? If the answer is yes, how do I not? How do we look at this? How do I try again? But so accepting the previous version of myself, appreciating that I have better to be, and then constantly being able to just flip towards the good easier and more frequently.
It's like you've practiced.
And what did that take? It took a lot of practice. What do I practice? I drink very infrequently. I sleep very well. I eat very well. I exercise all the time. I cold therapy. I create maps for success that I never used to make. I used to be able to go through an entire day, and still sometimes do go through entire days where I am busy, completing, checking things off. And so then by the end of the day, because I actually didn't check anything off and I just stayed busy, I somehow was able to make it through an entire day thinking I did nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's a performance thing, and that's a like reframe and put into perspective all things. And we work to do that all the time.
Constantly.
I've actively done it in front of your eyes right now, because I was fired up, and now having, put a focus to my energy, and with the aim of building rather than destructing, I've actually done an alright job at putting thoughts together and creating something. creating a conversation, creating a focus, creating this video, instead of having a pout, saying fuck it, and this is stupid, and all very real thoughts that occur frequently, but am better armed in combating those thoughts, right? And so I'm in my own corner, my practice is in my corner, you're in my corner, against, you know, the negative attributes that I might have, to acknowledge that they exist, acknowledge that they creep in, and acknowledge that by making choices, I can be better. Mm-hmm. Am I letting my light shine? No. Okay, how do we let our light shine? Probably by doing a little bit more of this. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, guiding principles, values, practices, and accepting feedback, honest with myself as well as others, constantly taking on information without the idea that I know better or that I'm right in any way, right? If I maintain this self-righteousness of I'm right, everyone else is wrong, I can't be told different, then I don't get better, right? And so by opening myself up, by raising my hand, admitting I'm wrong in many instances, admitting I could be better in many instances, and then getting excited for the incremental steps to get better, I think there's a bit of a recipe there. The acceptance and humility required to admit you're wrong is very hard. The courage to change direction, change stance is very hard. And I guess because I'm willing to do those things, that is what makes this easier.
I think a shift I've seen in you, and I know I've said this before, but is the shift from a more sense of entitlement, a sense of, you know, self-centeredness, if that makes sense, to service, to really caring about your impact, the way that you affect those around you, making the world a better place. Let your light shine is a literal metaphor for that. Everything that your light touches, is it, you know, sunlight helping the world grow, helping the world be better. And so I would say, as an outsider, and you can tell me if you agree or not, but that shift of me to, oh wow, like there's an openness that's gone on, that I think is really, it's so easy to be fragile when it's all about us, when we, you know, want things to be one very specific kind of way, and we have no control over the world around us. Life is messy, so then when things don't go just so, you know, we can be set off so easily. When we have a broader awareness of the fact that life is messy, there's a lot of moving pieces here, there are people around me that will be impacted by how I show up, etc., to use your favorite. It just makes a big difference.
The shift from trying to be better than everyone to being better for everyone is a way that I've described how I've felt, or how I imagine what has changed, which speaks to the collaboration over competition, which speaks to teamwork, which speaks to togetherness rather than being isolated, or being a one-man army, or going down the only road I've ever known. Right? And I don't know. There's it happens slowly. It happens over time, and I'm very grateful to be still on the path, I didn't mention gratitude in all my, got you in my corner, got my sense of gratitude in my corner, got my practice in my corner. You add a support system with values and
Depth.
and an aim for doing things properly and feeling grateful about what is happening, and yeah, I think there's different pieces, and working on having all those pieces is super important.
Something you mentioned that I think is really worth kind of circling back on and wrapping this all up with is the idea of who you surround yourself with. So Kev mentioned knowing that he has certain people in his corner, and I think in general we need to be really cognizant of who we surround ourselves with on a daily basis. Not only who do we know we can lean on and feel support by, but just what voices are we being exposed to on a daily basis, and how those things may or may not sway the way that we move through the world. I try to focus really hard on surrounding myself with quality over quantity in terms of my relationships. People who have aligned value systems. That doesn't mean we share all the same beliefs. We might have varying views on politics, religion, whatever, but our guiding principles of how we want to show up and be better for those around us are there, and so that's important to me. But I also am very cognizant of the online communities that I put myself in. When you were speaking to the EIHL community or the forums, I've never gone on there. Or if I did in early days, I saw some of the stuff that was going on in those communities talking about friends of mine, and just no way. I don't want to be exposed to that kind of thing. It doesn't make me a better person playing in that playground. So yeah, I think that's an important piece to really kind of hit home, that it's very important the people that you are immediately around all the time, that you're hearing messages from, that you're receiving energy from, that you are performing for, that you're showing up for, make sure that that's quality and in alignment,
Yeah, making sure you surround yourself with good people who are supportive of you, and make sure that what you are surrounding yourself with, because more than the people is also the online access and where we are, whether that be virtually or literally, and making sure that you are taking on good energy and something that is working with what you're trying to instill or build. And if you are amongst people or communities or in online spheres that go against where you're trying to go and what you're trying to cultivate, good luck. If you have goals and you are trying to achieve them, setting up your environment and your team in order to give yourself best chance of success is very, very important. We were talking about our content intake and what we're watching, what we're reading, what we're seeing, and there's definitely been times where we're sitting here like, man, this self-development vein that we are always swimming in is that a bad thing? Should we not be?
Should we have more variety in terms of the content we're consuming?
And thinking about it, at least me thinking about it, and we touched on it very, very briefly before we got on this topic, what else could you be listening to? Could you be listening to yourself and your typically negative thought trains? Could you be listening to your circle of friends who might very well all, be in a victimhood mentality? What else are you plugged into? What else are you listening to? What else is creating your internal narrative? And when you hear something once, or read something once, or see, is that enough to create change? And if the answer is no, well then is there too much self-development stuff to take on, or are we just trying to constantly reaffirm that new way of thinking, that behavior, that openness, those changes? And it's an interesting question to pose, I guess. Maybe I'll pose it to you, where is that a bad thing? Is there such thing as overdoing it? Where do you draw the line? Should you make sure you read every single book? What is the appropriate way? Because then you become all consumed with that.
Totally. Yeah, it's hard for me because I'm so interested in psychology, human behavior, all that stuff, and have been since I was a teenager. So I'm just interested in that stuff. You know, the same way that somebody else might be interested in sports, that's what I'm interested in. I do think, and I can say this personally, I think it comes back to intention. There have been times where I have been consuming personal development stuff and trying so hard to be this idealized version of myself that I'm chasing perfectionism, I'm running on a hamster wheel, and I've lost sight of the interest, like all of a sudden there's this goal that I'm trying to achieve that is actually unachievable because I will forever be growing and changing and learning new things about myself and improving and whatever. So I think it comes back to intention. Right now, because I've worked really hard to check those parts of myself, that performer, that perfectionist who is very alive in me, I have to constantly kind of just not let her take over. And when I do come back to the stuff that I am just genuinely interested in, I really enjoy surrounding myself with intelligent people, with people who are having unique ideas about life, who are philosophers, who are psychologists, who are interested in the same things that I am. By surround myself, I mean listening to these podcasts, reading books, watching videos on YouTube. That's what I want to surround myself with because I do feel like as a result of that, I am growing. I also realize that, there aren't necessarily original thoughts. I do believe that a lot of what I'm reading, listening to, are just iterations of similar ideas or similar theories or principles. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with hearing the same message over and over and over again when it comes to stuff like this because it's an important reminder and again reiterates, that this is the path that I want to be on. It makes sense to me. I try to also take in other ideas and things that challenge myself because I do think that's an important part to growth too. You can't put yourself in an echo chamber. But by hearing these messages of goodness, of service, of, tools and tips to being the best version of yourself, these are important things that I want to remind myself of frequently. And you never know when something is going to come at just the right time or be a reminder of something that you already knew, but that's kind of positioned in a slightly different way. I think about, too, when I want to go ahead and share some of these messages with other people, if I've heard the same idea presented in 10 different ways, perhaps that will arm me with a variety of language to be able to present that to somebody else in a way that best suits them, if that makes sense. So I just think, I think you can overdo it if you're coming at it from a place of perfection or because you don't feel good enough and I need to, maybe if I were more like this, I would be good enough. Like there are those, things that we can get caught up in and that's worth reflecting upon. But I would say for me at this point in my life, I love consuming stuff like that because I want to be surrounding myself with ideas that are in alignment to the way that I'm trying to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think back to instances where I was taking on a lot of content, all very much the same, all very inquisitive, all very self-reflective. And there is a time, at least for me, when I'm taking on all this stuff where I feel like, man, I've been under the hood way too long. Like this car, this vehicle can't run because I've been playing with too many pieces. I've been trying different parts and fitting them together, and you know, because I'm trying new ideas and taking on new things and trying to practice new stuff, I'm so focused on fixing myself that I'm actually kind of stunned and overwhelmed. And you know, I think with knowing that, there's way more value in taking on less information and content and practicing more. Right? You're better to take on less and put things into action as opposed to be continuously always consuming and reading and taking these things on. But also important to make sure that you have different voices reiterating the similar messages.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess trying to understand where they are coming from and why they're coming from where they are, what their beliefs and values are, and yeah, just with a consideration that maybe you can adopt a little bit of what they're putting down. And, you know, that's a whole other conversation of, well, who do you listen to, and who do you go to for this information, and who are your people that you look up to in this space? And we have many different people that we refer to consistently for guidance and messages that are encouraging and in attempt to help people, all of which are very helpful, all of which are very different but saying the same thing. And you know, that's important because not everyone will resonate with this one person that I really like, and maybe they'll resonate with this other person who I also really like, who is very, very different.
Yeah.
And so making sure you're sampling different information from different sources. And given the podcast space, if you look around, dig around enough at whether it be high-performing people or whatever else, you'll see that they're all engaging in similar conversations with each other anyway, and cream rises to the top. And, you know, in acknowledging that, you can probably go to they who have the best podcasts, who speak to the highest performers and understand what it is about these people that ensures they are well and therefore high performing and showing up as their best selves in the world.
Something that you touched on that I just want to sit with for a second is the importance of taking that contemplative time to yourself. If we're constantly consuming without taking, 15 minutes a day, for me this looks like going for walks outside in silence. I leave my phone inside, so it's just me out there, or I'll journal. But I will just take time to be alone with my thoughts, to reflect on the things that I've been consuming, to really ask myself, do I agree with that? Do I not? It's so easy to just watch a bunch of stuff and feel like, oh, I gotta do that, I gotta do that, I gotta do that, without stopping to say, do I? Like, does that make sense for me? Does that seem like something I should be doing? Do I agree with that idea? Maybe part of it I do, maybe some of it I don't, but to take contemplative time to sit with yourself and see what ideas come up for you, I think is a really important piece. That if you're just consuming all the time and on that hamster wheel, you might not take the time to do. So I just want to sort of like highlight that piece. There was a time actually this past summer where I kind of hit a breaking point. I had a very hard start to 2023, and the first 5 months of 2023 I felt extremely lost, extremely angry, extremely hurt by a situation. And rather than really truly sitting and acknowledging all that pain, I just went straight into like fix it mode with a hyper lens on myself. And my girlfriends, basically, I without going too much into the details, which I can in another talk if people want that, but I was just constantly looking at like how I needed to be better, needed to be different, needed to grow in order to not feel so shit. And I had my like group of close girlfriends, we, you know, were talking one night, and they acknowledged like that I needed to stop, that I needed to pause, that I needed to have more patience and grace and kindness towards myself, and that my life isn't a construction zone. But I just slipped into this, you know, gotta fix it, gotta fix it, gotta fix it with, well, the only thing I have control over is myself, so I have to fix me, I have to fix me, I have to be better, I have to be happier, whatever. And I wasn't holding space or just being gentle with the fact that like a really shitty thing happened in my life, and I had to grieve that. So I think, you know, I just come back to this, you know, idea of contemplation, of sitting with ourselves, you know, as much as we're trying to learn and grow and do better, there needs to be this balance, right? Of yes, consuming, yes, learning, but also just being with ourselves and allowing our own time and wisdom to help us get there too. We really do know what's best for us deeply.
And seeking the opinions and inputs of others when you are needing support and needing somebody to bounce something off, and making sure that you yourself are going about things the right way, thinking things through the right way, and yeah, always good to just return to conversation to recenter if we are spending too much time in our own contemplation.
So,
in this episode, we've gone from daylight to darkness.
we've said a lot of things.
We have...
I feel like our energy has also gone like this too. I feel like at times this has felt heavy, but like good, but just heavy.
Yeah, I think this is the least curated, most raw conversation we've had. There were questions posed and detours made that wound us up where we maybe didn't necessarily plan to go,
Which is good. To talk about cyberbullying.
And we did. And we talked we talked about pausing before you act and asking yourself whether or not what you're doing is from the right place, and the inquiry we must have both with ourselves as well as others, the curiosity that we should bring to ourselves as well as others, and an open-mindedness and a willingness to become better, to avoid being self-righteous, and to grow. I think that pretty well covers it.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of ground, and this has been fun. Another cool exercise. Excited to watch this back.
Yeah.
And to see if...
what was just said.
Yeah, see how many half stories we told and how sidetracked we truly got. But, no, in every conversation that we get to have, both like this as well as not on camera, we are continually learning about ourselves and others. And hopefully people who get to see this are resonating and are learning with us or considering things. Feedback is always welcome.
Very.
And we are excited to do this for the people that get to see the video, and so literally anything you guys have to say about the videos, about the subject matter, about what you'd like to hear us discuss, we're
if you felt
open
we
to it.
were wrong, if you felt you know, as much as I am not trying to invite cyberbullying, if there is something that you maybe see a different way, yeah, like we can have conversations about that, whether that be in the comments or bringing it about here. We're very open to that.
Yeah, just refer back to our video where we talked about giving and receiving feedback, and please focus on the giving feedback portion so that you can be kind in your delivery.
We're fragile. Just kidding. We're resilient.
We're resilient, and we can take it, and
Yeah.
we're ready for it, and we invite it, and we thank you guys so much for staying with us this long, and if that is all, then we will see you next time.